I've always believed that you can tell a lot about a neighborhood by the people who live next door. But nothing, not even my own instincts, prepared me for what happened after I moved into that quiet little street in northern Pennsylvania. It was early fall when I first noticed something unusual about the man living next door. He was tall, thin, always dressed in an old oversized gray coat, even when the weather wasn't cold. His house looked normal from the outside, but the windows were always covered with heavy curtains, like he didn't want the world looking in. Or maybe, like he was trying to keep something from looking out. The first night I spent in my new house, I woke up at around 2:30 a.m. to a soft tapping sound. At first, I tried to ignore it. New houses always have strange noises. But after a few minutes, I realized the tapping wasn't coming from inside my home. It was coming from my bedroom window. When I pulled back the curtain, there was no one there. But my neighbor's upstairs light was flickering like someone was pacing back and forth. It stopped the moment I looked at it, as if whoever was inside knew I was watching. The next morning, I met him for the first time. He was standing in his yard, staring at my house like he'd been waiting for me to come outside. "You moved in last night," he said in a low, tired voice. "I hope you sleep well here." It wasn't a friendly greeting. It sounded more like a warning. For the next few days, I tried to mind my own business. But I couldn't ignore the strange things happening around his house. At night, I heard footsteps in the hallway, even though I lived alone. My front door sometimes shook softly, like someone was testing it from the outside. And the worst part? Every time I looked toward his house, he was standing at his window, watching me. One night, around 3 a.m., I woke up to that same tapping sound again, this time louder, more urgent. When I looked out my window, I almost jumped back in fear. My neighbor was standing directly under the street lamp across the road, facing my house, completely still. But his head was tilted at an impossible angle, like he had broken his neck. I blinked, and he vanished. The next morning, I tried to confront him. I knocked on his door, but no one answered. Instead, the door creaked open by itself. The house inside was dark and smelled like old, wet wood. I called out his name, but the only answer was a soft scraping sound coming from the upstairs hallway. Something about the silence made my skin crawl, so I backed away and left as fast as I could. That night, everything escalated. I woke to the sound of footsteps, clear, heavy footsteps, walking slowly around my living room. I froze, holding my breath, listening as they moved to the bottom of my stairs. Then the footsteps began climbing. 1 step, 2 steps, 3. I grabbed my phone and whispered, "Who's there?" But the footsteps stopped instantly, right outside my bedroom door. The silence was worse than the noise. Slowly, the doorknob began to turn. I jumped from the bed, yanked the door open, and no one was there. But at the end of the hallway, in the moonlight spilling through the window, I saw a tall shadow disappear into the corner, the exact height and shape of my neighbor. That was the moment I decided I had to get out. I ran outside, desperate for help, and banged on his door again. But this time, his door swung wide open, and the house was completely empty. Every room was abandoned. Dust on the floor, cobwebs on the ceiling. No furniture, no personal belongings. It was clear. No one had lived there for a long, long time. As I stood there, confused and terrified, I suddenly heard a voice, low and whispery, right behind me. "You shouldn't have come in." I spun around, but the house was empty. I bolted out, ran across the yard, and didn't stop until I was back inside my own home. The police arrived a few minutes later, but when they checked the place, they confirmed exactly what I had seen. The house had been empty for years. The man I described didn't exist anymore. According to the officer, a man who lived there 20 years ago had died inside the house after falling down the stairs. His neck had snapped from the impact, exactly like the angle I saw under the street lamp. I moved out the next week, but even now, Sometimes late at night, I wake up to that soft tapping sound at my window. The same sound I heard on my very first night. And every time I'm afraid to look, because I know what I might see standing outside. My neighbor, watching me, still trapped between his house and mine.